All right. So, welcome everyone to the third session of the Climate, Resource, and Resource Management and Human Development Community Resilience Initiatives in Asia 2020 webinar series. Our session today is broadcasted live on Facebook page of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, as seen on your screens. We begin the session with the house rules. So all participants and attendees must mute themselves so that we won't be able to hear unnecessary background noise during the webinar session. The ceremony will be recorded for documentation purposes. For our distinguished speakers, please keep your video off and your microphone muted, especially if it's not going to speak as well. For our speakers also, you'll be hearing my voice when you only have 2 minutes left in your presentation. For attendees, please send your questions through the chat box at the bottom of your screen so our team can note this and raise it during our open forum. We begin this webinar with opening remarks from our main convener, Dr. Emma Porrio, who is also a professor at the Ateneo de Manila's Department of Sociology and Anthropology and project leader and principal investigator of the CCARPH project. We now welcome Dr. Emma Porrio.
Good morning. Welcome to the third session of the Climate, Resource Management, and Human Development lecture series, which is focused on community resilience initiatives in Asia 2020. So, in behalf of our project holder, Father Robert Yap, and President of the Ateneo de Manila University, let me welcome you in behalf of our partners as well, our partners in Department of Sociology and Anthropology of the Ateneo de Manila, the Political Science Department of the Ateneo de Manila, and at the National Resilience Council. Let me thank you for sharing your morning with us and for being with us. It's a choice, I believe, that you want to be with us this morning. So thank you. This seminar lecture series is really possible because of the intellectual generosity of our colleagues and our leaders in the community resilience field. Like this morning, we will have, Attorney Gloria Ramos of the Oceana, Philippines, and Maria Tabada of the Gender Resource Center of the Visayas State University. So I would say that this lecture series is really privileged because of the sharing of experts in the field, and also it's privileged because of the patience of my students from all over the world to be able to, bear with us in this digital space wherein it really limits us from a good interaction. So I would like to thank really the scholars of the Asian Peacebuilders program, and also I'd like to thank, Diana Mendoza, who is Dr. Diana Mendoza, who is the chair of the Political Science Department, and Oliver Quintana, who's managing this the APS program from the department. And also I'd like to thank Joel Canoday, who is my chair in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology. And most of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Nandi Aldaba, our dean, and also our vice president for Loyola Schools, Dr. Marlo Vilchis, for making this possible. In June, when we were planning this, we thought, oh, okay, I will take you, my students, to our partners in Metro Manila and other partners outside of Metro Manila. But as I always tell you, COVID has other plans. And as we said in climate and disaster resilience work, when a shock hits a system, we should be able to bounce forward and recalibrate ourselves. So when it was not happening at all, that the lockdown will let up, in September, I started contacting people in this field who are in resource management. I said, can you please share your expertise, share your wisdom with my students, and with the world, of course. So thank you very much, Attorney Golly. Thank you, Tess, and to all the previous speakers. Last week, we were really privileged to have Dr. Lisa Lim of the Institute of Social Order and the community organizers with the mangrove systems in Soroma, Camarines Sur, and also there with Engineer Kim in the Calabanga area. We were also fortunate last Thursday to have Professor Miwako Hosoda from Shisa University in Japan. And then we were very fortunate, the sharing of Father Tibbs Rebellias and Professor Ray Lucero from the University of the Philippines Open U. And then we had the privilege also of Father Jojo Fong, who just came back from the Laudato Si Center in Oxford, to share with us his notion of integral ecology through coexistential ecology. So thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everyone. And let's us now listen to our brilliant speakers share their experiences on resource management. Thank you very much. Okay, Ina? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Porio. Now, we call on our first guest speaker, Attorney Gloria Estenzo Ramos, who will discuss about mainstreaming marine ecosystem protection for a climate resilient community. Attorney Gloria Ramos is the Vice President of Oceana, Philippines. I now welcome Attorney Gloria Ramos.
Thank you so much and good morning. And special thanks to Dr. Emma Porio for inviting me and being part of this uh, great panel speakers that you have invited in past sessions, and also now at Dr. Tabada, Tess Tabada. Okay, so I'm now going to share the screen. This is a topic, of course, close to my heart. Okay, so how do we mainstream marine ecosystem protection for a climate resilient community? So, especially in the Philippines, considered one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to the impacts of climate change. But before that, let me share with you Oceana, how it is. It's the only international NGO focused solely on marine conservation. Our purpose is really to have science-based policies to protect our oceans, ensure food security, protect our wildlife, and of course, our people. So we are in 30% of the countries which produce the wildlife catch in the entire world. And included in that is, of course, the Philippines, which ranked 12 in the 2020 FAO report as a source of the global marine fish catch. So this is my presentation today. I'll give an intro, the state of the fisheries in the country, so you'd understand why it's so important for all of us to be part in this ocean governance, protecting our habitats and ensure food security, and of course, lessons learned. So this is based on studies conducted. We are among the most, the people which is so highly dependent on marine ecosystems. So when you look at nutrition, coastal protection, and all dependencies, we rank next to Indonesia in the entire world. Unfortunately, the policymakers had been focused on land, but not look at its impact on the ocean. So this is the state of the country. We have, though we are part of the Coral Triangle Initiative, Coral Triangle, one of the richest, when you talk about corals, we hold 2/3 of the world's most biodiverse corals. Our catch are declining. Okay, so and why is it that our marine wealth has not trickled down to the fisher folks? They are considered among the poorest, in fact, the poorest in the sectors. And this is the state. Why do we have this alarming state of the fisheries? illegal, unregulated fishing, overfishing, weak enforcement of laws, and habitat destruction. So why? Because for a lot of reasons, I mentioned data deficiency and scarcity of information. There's overlapping functions of agencies, lack of public participation and transparency, and lack of capacity of our staff. So we did a survey in September 2017 and asked the people, our people, what they think are the three most pressing issues facing our oceans. So first on the list was pollution. So plastic pollution is a big problem, illegal and destructive fishing, and of course, the impacts of climate change. And it's so important for us to work together. And so Oceana's goal is really rebuild fisheries by having science-based management, honest to goodness enforcement, and mainstreaming transparency and accountability as well in protecting our marine ecosystem. So this was in 2014. Former director Asis Perez was in our launch, and he committed to fight illegal fishing. So this was November, in February 2014, February 2015, because of the warning from our biggest fish importer, the EU, which slapped a warning, a yellow card warning for us to shape up and fight illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing. Our Congress passed a law, RA 1065, for which amended the Fisheries Code of 1998. So the amendments are key to fighting illegal fishing. So Oceana came in at the right time. We readily embrace the amendments and make sure that the agencies and the people also know about it. So vessel monitor is really tracking the behavior of of commercial fishers. Then science-based fisheries management. There's also a provision for accountability, citizen suit provisions, and protection from harassing suits. And we have very strong legal framework. Name it, we have it. And our constitution has embedded the duty of the state to protect the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. And all of these environmental laws are still good. In fact, I always say we don't need to change them. We just need to implement the laws for this to really bring benefits to our people and improve the resiliency of our natural ecosystems. Then we have the only Supreme Court in the world which crafted the rules and procedure for environmental cases. So in the commentary section, they said that each citizen has the duty to hold government accountable and to institute suits as stewards of the environment. And then we adhere to the precautionary principle. Okay, I know that not all countries in the world have this, but we have that. So we look at SDG 14, life below water that has to be protected. So the challenges are there, destruction of marine and coastal habitats and biodiversity. So we need to protect them. And of course, overfishing, poor fishing practices, and of course, the coral reefs and other marine habitats such as mangrove, seagrass are being devastated. So this is the strategy I mentioned earlier. We deal with the stakeholders, so decision makers and community. We also use to the fullest extent the law, the science behind the law, and of course, media and communications, which is very important. So our campaigns are time bound. So from 2014 to 2018, we have this Protect Benham Bank. 2018, President Duterte declared it as a marine resource reserve. Ban bottom trawling in 2018, the DILG issued guidelines for banning bottom trawling. And commercial fishing, we started in Tanyan Strait. Enforcement, patrolling began, Protected Area Management Board was constituted, and this gave us the inspiration to scale our campaign nationwide. So we have now a nationwide campaign to stop illegal fishing. And of course, we have institutionalized vessel monitoring. So we pilot tested the use of the technology, which is new in the country. And in 2018, DILG came up with a memorandum. This is the Department of the Interior Local Government, required coastal local governments to regulate and monitor fisheries activities in the country. And just recently, we had to go to court to sue the Department of Agriculture and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources to craft the rules on vessel monitoring for all commercial fishing vessels. And just a few weeks ago, on October 12, Secretary Dar finally issued the rules promulgating vessel monitoring for all commercial fishing vessels. So this will change the seascape of ocean governance in the country. So these are some of the pictures, President Duterte signing. So this is the importance of Benham. It nearly doubles our the size of the Philippines. In 2012, the United Nations validated our claim, and this has 100% coral cover. And this is the policy issuance that we're able to help the DILG and DA-Craft. So bottom trawling, destroys even the seabed and takes everything on its site. So this is banned now with implementing guidelines, but we really need to work further on this because the governing body has to be there. And because we lack data, Oceana partnered with the League of Municipalities of the Philippines to come up with an online platform for reporting illegal fishing activities. And if you want to subscribe, I would really encourage you to do that so you know what's happening. So we use the VIRS technology, which detects night lights in municipal waters, and we have reported that to the authorities to hold or to require coastal local governments what they were doing to fight municipal fishing happening, commercial fishing happening in municipal waters. So this is a sample. The ones dotted are, you can see vessels, apparent commercial fishing vessels in municipal waters. On the left side, you can see so many, and that's part of the West Philippine Sea. So these are screenshots from the Karagatan Patrol on operations taking place. So our fisher folk in Tanyon credit the patrolling and the enforcement happening for their abundant catch. They were saying that the fish that they have never seen for a long time have come back because of that, but still challenges persist. So this is what we did. We used the law to effect behavior in policymakers. So in 2018, we did that, and it moved the Fisheries Bureau into action. And on the right side, last two, we're able to have the goals that we want to be achieved: vessel monitoring, national sardine management plan, and even establishment of fisheries management area. So from 2019 to 2022, these are our campaigns. So the ones in yellow, those are the ones we already have victories for our ocean. And then for protection of coral rich marine protected areas, the expedition in Panaon Island from October 15 to November 4 was done, and beautiful corals were there. So deter illegal dump and field is the reclamation known in the Philippines. So we have sent the notice to sue. We are ready for a lawsuit. And ban single-use plastics. We are gaining more constituents to join us in this fight. So this is the policy issuance where we are so proud to be part of on vessel monitoring. So this is where I hope our universities would come in and join. The entire country has been divided into 12 fisheries management areas, which would be science-based. There's a science advisory group and governing body, management bodies, which should be participated by various sectors. Okay, so okay, I will just show you 5 of 12 have been established. We also do capacity training for judges and prosecutors. They're key in of course, making sure the laws are respected. So we were constituted the first Sahans for FFAs that are now embedded in various fisheries management areas. So we're all able to do this because of strong collaborations with various heads and workers in the agency, and of course with the people in the community and stakeholders. And we have to emphasize the important role of relaying information and triggering action. So we also do this with our youth leaders, especially, so they take ownership on this fight to protect and ensure resiliency in our coastal communities. So we also did a forum, a survey. We commissioned social weather stations to get the feel of people on marine resources and oceans, and we share that with everybody. So strengthening partnerships, amplifying campaigns, and also with the church. And these are on the right are fisher folk leaders, including women fisher folk, so are with us in this fight. So this Manila Bay is an ongoing fight in the country. It's a historical landmark, but yet there are several projects lined up to destroy, and which will destroy seagrass, mangroves, and corals. There are corals there. So the new Manila International Airport is problematic. It's not just located on a geohazard site, it will impact Manila Bay and the source of the materials to dump it. Something like 20 million dump trucks will be needed for it. So, and there's a pending case. There's a case which have required DNR and other agencies, 12 agencies, to comply with its obligation to perform its mandate. And this Manila Bay is a sardine-rich pond area. This is where they lay their eggs and their larvae grow. And recently, Sardinella pacifica, endemic in the country, it was found in the Philippines, Manila Bay, Quezon, Samar, and Sorsogon. And there are corals. It's not a dead Manila Bay, but it's filled with life. So they shouldn't touch it. And mangroves, the last remaining mangroves is in Manila Bay, and we should protect them. Okay, I know you know very well ecosystem services and the impact on livelihood. We have a social justice provision in the Constitution, which grants preferential access to fishing grounds to our small-scale fisher folks, but they are being displaced, not just in Manila Bay, but nationwide. So this is our Constitution. We're so proud of this Constitution, and we are ready anytime to defend it. So there's also the problem of sea level rise. Philippines is considered, the sea level rise is rising 4 times faster than the global average rate. And of course, the issue on plastics, we are pushing very hard for the National Solid Waste Management Commission to already come up with a mandate, long overdue, 19 years old, to have a list of non-environmentally acceptable products. The effect of it should be to ban its production, distribution, usage. And this is the Panoon Island expedition. This was on October 15. They left for Leyte. Expedition in the time of COVID. They have their face mask and following safety procedures. It's the beautiful, beautiful corals in Panoon Island, which really deserve to be protected. So what does all of this add to? Of course, resiliency of marine ecosystems and people, all of our campaigns. So, well, this is my favorite Dr. Jane Goodall address to the decision makers and asking them, are you really concerned about the future of your grandchildren? Because if you are in the business as usual mindset, then their future is really at stake if you don't do something. So I used to be a columnist for Cebu Daily News. One of my columns, no room for indifference. Okay. So together, let's save the oceans, feed the world, and let's have community resilient people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Gali. Now we move to our next set of speakers who will be discussing the build implications to resource management and community resilience. This will be led by Professor Maria Aurora Teresita Tabada, from the head of the Visayas State University Research Center with Miss Mary Jean Diaz from the UNESCO-IHE Institute of Water Education in the Netherlands, studying MSc Water Management Governance. We now welcome Professor Tabada.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Porio, for inviting me to this webinar.
Yes,
Caparas,
louder.
uh, Ms. Caparas is already in the Netherlands, and so she will be listening in on Facebook. So I'd like to acknowledge she was my we were together here when we were doing these studies starting 2017. So today, this is the outline of my presentation. Context, San Miguel as a resource. What are the issues and challenges with sand mining, and some implications to natural resource management and community resilience. The last part will be some of the reflections there for now. Okay, so essentially, for us in Eastern Visayas, Super Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda is very much a reality. And so this is part of the context of why it is important for us to look at the issue of sand and gravel mining. And then the Philippines, the drive, actually, if you notice the title, Build, 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 is actually a program of the government under the Ambition 2030, which really hopes to build a progressive society for the country. It's really building the infrastructures that are needed. And this is the very big push for having increased demands in sand and gravel for this program. And at the same time, we have an ongoing national conversation of Philippine coal mining.
Yes, my students cannot hear you. Your voice is so low.
Is it louder? Loud enough? This is okay?
Yes, it's okay now.
Okay, sorry. And then, of course, we realized that this water, energy, and food actually are interconnected, and in changes in one area will affect the other. So we need to look at it, especially in relation to food security. And then, of course, the UN, the goal of sustainable development that we have, and the realization that when we're talking about natural resources, there is such as a natural resource first. So we know what sustainable development is. Already, development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. And in the case of the extractives, we have seen how many areas, how many places, very rich in natural resources. Once the resources are extracted and they are gone, we realize that these countries or these areas remain poor. No? So the need to be able to ensure that the available resources benefit fully, no, countries or towns or municipalities benefit fully from their natural resource wealth, and for governments to be able to respond effectively to public welfare needs. Okay. So sand and gravel mining, it's a global industry, and it's responsible for about 85% of all mineral extraction. And according to Yale University, their website, it's the least regulated and quite possibly the most corrupt and environmentally destructive. And we have seen some of the documentaries on the sand wars, which show us, no, the realization that many of our beaches are disappearing because the sand have been extracted and brought to other countries, no, for construction of all these different uh, construction of different facilities or structures, no, in other countries other than where the sun is coming from. So, and then of course, in 2020, just last July, there's an ongoing global conversation to challenge the paradigm of infinite sand resources to be able to find a way of sustainably managing our sand resource, because these are not forever. Okay, these are finite resources. So in the Philippines, particularly in Leyte, which is found in eastern Visayas, it's in the middle part of the country on the eastern side. The most common mining activity actually in the Visayas, except for some areas, is really sand and gravel extraction. And in Leyte, there is high demand for our sand and gravel because it is premium grade volcanic area. And then we have seen how, in the pictures, you've seen side by side the sand with the rice fields. And here you have an area where the sand is being accumulated and then transported to Cebu and then transported to other parts of the world, China among them. Okay. So we've seen here, these are the locations of the sand and gravel operations. The ones in dark brown are actually issued. No, these are industrial sand and gravel permits. There are also permits issued by the local government units, either the province or the city, which are usually less than 5 hectares. No, beyond 5 hectares, it's issued by NGB, and so these are only in certain parts of Leyte. So this is the western side, Ormoc, Albuera, and then this is the, and then here, Hindang, Hilongos. So these are some of the municipalities. And then on the eastern side, going towards Tacloban, Bulag, Tulosa, all these areas. At the same time, you have permit holders. The bigger the circle here, the larger is the extraction. So the extraction is actually largest on the eastern side, no? But the revenues are higher actually here on the western side. Okay. So how much does the local government get? Less than 1% of the revenues from sand and gravel are provider used for the local government in the area. So if you notice, it's really a very small percentage that goes to the local government coffers, but we'll see if that percentage that goes really makes up for the impact that it has on the environment. So in Leyte, if you notice, the volume of sand and gravel that has been extracted, actually it seems to be going down, but this is not the latest data anymore. No, we have to update this. But the data is going down. The irrigated harvested areas are also they are increasing. No, but in the second semester, these are usually twice a year when plant rice is going down, and then the volume of tule is going down. The total volume of the rice production is relatively for a number of years it was going down, and then it's starting to increase again. So the monetary for the extracted sand and gravel, if you notice, from 2011 to 2017, it has been going up, and then in 2016, 2017, it went down. And then the volume, the value of this, depending on which report that use the Philippine Statistical Authority or the NGB price watch, there's a difference. No? But difference is in the sand and gravel that has been extracted. But you see that it brings in a lot of revenues. So, yeah. Okay. But we also saw that this was a study done by Gargantes and al, looking at sand and gravel, looking at actually the rice production losses of summer in Eastern Visayas, Landa, and production losses to the destruction of irrigation systems brought about by sand and gravel extraction in 2016. So if you notice, uh, all the destruction brought about by the sand and gravel extraction, damaging the irrigation systems are actually greater than the destruction losses due to Typhoon Haiyan, 67,560, and then the losses were just 34,221 metric tons. So almost double the loss from uh, uh, Typhoon Haiyan. So we're seeing that the data is showing that in fact the losses that are due to typhoons are much less compared to the losses that have been experienced because of the damages brought up damages to the irrigation systems that are needed for the production of rice. This is data from me at about the same time. So if you notice here in Eastern Visayas, these are provinces of East, these are 3 of the 6 provinces of Eastern Visayas where you have the irrigation system from the National Irrigation Administration. So you have 33.97, a third of all the service areas of the NIA in these 3 provinces are affected by sand and gravel mining, which translates to 7,000 farmer beneficiaries, a cost of almost $1 billion, and then 23 municipalities, about 16% of the whole listed municipalities in Eastern Visayas. So, and then, so if you look at it in relation to what was presented earlier, the study there, you see that there is really great loss in terms of the service, how much is lost in the service area. So here in terms of pallet production in metric tons, it's 67,560. That's 48 million kilograms, so about 1.148 million 520 income of farmers from rice production, and about a third of people, 340,000, are affected by these losses. So that is quite a lot, loss from the destruction of the irrigation system. So that is the general picture in Eastern Visayas. So what are some of the issues and challenges that we have seen? So I grouped this together. There's one, social acceptability and CSO participation. So number one is the lack of genuine participation among affected communities. So for example, the law requires that there's a community scoping meeting, and applicants are required to present their maps, present the documents, and then present also the positive and negative impacts of mining. From what we have seen, there's a lack of comprehensive information because, of course, only the positive impacts are highlighted, especially if the community is not familiar or does not have prior experience of a sand and gravel extraction activity in their area. And so another issue really is the lack of genuine civil society and community representation, selection, and participation in the different mandated bodies. So this is important. The communities are represented, and civil society is also part of the process, so that there is the perspectives of the community are presented, but there is a genuine lack of this in the bodies that are part of the regulatory mechanisms for sand and gravel mining. And then these are some of the environmental impacts, conversion and destruction of rice fields, because there's an executive order which is supposed to be does not allow the conversion of rice fields, especially irrigated rice fields, into. So permittees have been buying rice field areas and converting them, extracting the sand and gravel from the field. Overloading, over-under-extraction, of course, the damage to irrigation systems, and the unregulated extraction of sand and gravel to meet the market demands. No? Because the market is not only in Ormoc or Cebu or Manila, it goes out of the country. Okay, so we have changes no, in water flow and volume. So you can imagine the river becomes wider and deeper. And then, okay, and then here, this was a study done uh, in Ormoc. So if you notice, there are three rivers. What they did was to look at the three different rivers that had sand and gravel operating. So one was, this was daily extraction, no? 531 trucks. Another had 854 trucks. And the other one, 908 trucks daily, no? Extracting sand and gravel. And then one river which had no sand and gravel extraction. And so you notice the difference in the amount of this undissolved solid particles, siltation, it includes siltation and river runoff, decaying plant and animal matter, domestic and industrial waste. So it tells you no, that so really, if you have all these sediments, all these undissolved solid particles, which will eventually go out to the sea, you can imagine what will happen to the corals and to the fishes and all the marine life surrounding the area. So can you imagine even just 531 trucks? No, try to imagine every day that you get the production every day. So it's something that it's difficult to imagine, but that's the reality, no? So that's one. Then of course, health concerns are women's issues because in the field visits that I did, these are issues that were raised by the women, especially along the barangays that were hosting the batching plants and the crushers, no? So the pollution, when the plant was operating, the smell was so bad, no, that the children are not able to sleep, especially if it's in the evening, or they kind of not able to breathe well. And then the noise from the crusher. So children now are not able to sleep well or have difficulty in studying. Okay, what are some of institutional capacity issues? The national government agencies, the regulatory capture. Now, part of the difficulty is communities' perception that the national government agencies are protecting the interests of the permittees and not the communities. So when, for example, when there is a monitoring, they wonder how committees wonder how come um, the companies are aware already. So it's always programmed. There are very seldom unannounced and visits so that permittees are able to prepare, you know, and sometimes hide the things that they do not want to be seen, you know, in the way they implement they extract the sand and gravel, you know, like some areas. Uh, there was one, it was over 1 year only around a meter, but here it was because it was very dark already. You cannot even see, no, the hole, no, because of the depth of the hole, no, that was made when they were extracting the sand and gravel. And then for the local government units, these are the cities, the municipalities, the provinces. Part of the, I think, constraint is really the lack of knowledge and even the skills, no? Especially, I mean, what are they supposed to monitor when they have when they are hosting sand and gravel projects, no? The lack of awareness, and then also limited capacity. Sometimes there are no people in the, um, the local government office, the environment office, to do the monitoring. The so what happens is that they rely a lot on the reporting that is done by the permittees themselves. There is no third party evaluation that is being done or third party as a source of data, no independent data from of the national government agency or the local government unit. And then of course the issue of corruption, because there's a lot of areas, no, like when you're can always look the other way around in terms of how many trucks are being loaded. And the basic problem with not having a copy even of the permits, the contracts that are signed by the companies, they sometimes the local government units are not given a copy, or and they don't even ask for a copy. So how do you know what to monitor? And of course, political dynamics, because some of the owners are also government officials or leaders, and in conflict of interest that may arise in this particular
Louder, Tess.
conflict. Sorry, political dynamics. No, the conflict of interest, especially if your local government officials are also permittees, and gravel permittees. Okay. And then the issue of transparency and accountability. So it's difficult obtaining data from the concerned agencies, even just the, the volume and the number of permittees. No? Difficulty. And then access to monitoring reports, especially for the community to be aware of the results of the monitoring that was done. There's the mechanism, no? The feedback to the community is not present, which would really be helpful for the community to know. And so, but that's also a function of capacity, in the lack of capacity on the community's part. And I mentioned that already. The other one is on revenue management, because since we have allowed the these kinds of projects to host these kinds of projects in our cities or municipalities, of course, the next thing that we really need to make sure is that we are getting, no, a fair share of the revenues from sand and gravel. For example, shares from the national wealth, from the taxes paid, no, by excise taxes paid by the permittees, especially for the large scale industrial sand and gravel. And then the other side of it, the flip side of it, is whether in fact the revenues that are generated from sand and gravel extraction are also used, how the revenues are utilized, so that one, you uh, uh, the communities that are hosting this will benefit in terms of the revenues, and that they can use it for improving their barangays, what else, other things. But at the same time, ensuring also that when the sand and gravel extraction is done, the communities will still have something. No? So that is why it's important also to look at utilization, not just the obtaining the revenues. Okay. So what are some of the implications? No? One, I looked at it in terms of government and the academe. So for government, we need to address data gaps, policy deficits, implementation constraints. We need to use science in generating the data that we need to be able to understand what is really happening when we allow sand and gravel extraction in our places. Not just whether the revenues are adequate, but in the first place, to really answer the question if it is okay, or that we hold it is that we host sand and gravel extraction. Now you have a municipality which is a very small municipality, but it hosts 26 permittees. No? So you can just imagine, even if you say 100 trucks a day for 26 permittees, that's still 2,600 trucks a day. No, this 20-ton. So, and then preparation, of course, for legislation, review of the SAG ordinance so that we'll be able to cover really what needs to be put in place, requirements for permittees, at the same time ensuring that the environment in the municipality is protected, or in the city is protected, and communities participate in the process. Of course, in always advocating for the multi-stakeholder group as a platform for improving natural resource governance. We have already the Philippine Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative as a model that we can use at the local level. Here you have government, you have industry, and you have civil society in one forum where, and then you talk about what are the issues of uh, extraction in your area, and what are the steps that need to be taken so that government benefits, industry also benefits, but more importantly, communities are not left behind. The communities are not the only ones who who take affected by whatever disasters or whatever problems arise from the extraction. And then there's really a need to improve monitoring of SAC operations by the local government units at all levels, and ensuring a genuine CSO, civil society select representative, no, in terms of selection, gender balance, and participation in these mandated groups. Okay. For the academe, this is very real for us because we live near areas and we see what is happening. So I think it's important technical assistance to capacitate local leaders and communities. I think that this is where we can really be of value. We help capacities, no? And then, of course, research to address these data gaps, provide alternative perspectives, no? To not just look at it from the perspective of generating revenues, but how about the other issues that need to be addressed, no? Water security, food security, energy security in the long term. And then, of course, generate new ideas, innovate, and influence public opinion, public policy, no, to expand the spaces of participation and decision-making of communities. So, for example, one of these ideas is really a mining development framework. If we should go into mining, what framework should we adopt, no? And then, okay, so where to now? So of course, although it sounds cliche, but definitely sustainable development, it's not just economics, it's just not the revenues, but importantly, protecting the environment, at the same time ensuring that everyone, especially the marginalized, benefit, no, from these extractive activities. Okay, we need systems thinking to address linkages. No, I think part of the problem at the local government unit and even within the academe, no, is thinking my own field, my discipline, my office, and so we are not able to see the picture, the big picture, and the linkages that need to be made in order to push the boundaries so that we are able to address all these issues. And then build should also mean building better, empowered, and resilient communities. So it's not just the infrastructures, but really I think the important thing is really looking at the communities are supposed to benefit from the program and how we can use the revenues that we generate in order to make sure that it's not only communities that internalize the costs of this production and extraction activities. So we tried to do our share in February 2019. We had a roundtable discussion and we asked industry, local government unit, the national government agencies, and the CSOs, no, their take on responsible sand and gravel extraction in Eastern Visayas. So essentially, we tried to create a safe space for the multi-stakeholders to continue the dialogue, no, on responsible mining. So industry says, It means complying with required legal documents, performing corporate social responsibilities, comply with agreements during the public hearing, and allocation of a rehabilitation fund. Local government unit says it has to do with payment of taxes, social acceptability of operations, environmental awareness, allocation via fund, and financial capability of the permittees. For civil society, strong implementation of the existing laws, and of course, conduct of economic, social, environmental assessments of the area being applied for. No? And then empowering barangay officials to monitor sand and gravel operations, proper collection of taxes, and transparency in operations, documents, data, and related information. So we have started this dialogue and we hope that we'll able to move forward with this. We had another one in December last year, and we hope that we found that the the coming together, the roundtable discussion was very helpful in listening to what each had to say, but at the same time being able to identify what were the areas that still needed to be addressed to, especially here in the region. So finally, I think my final reflection is on the engaged social scientists. So you cannot just stand back and continue teaching, continue doing research without seeing how you can make a difference with the science, with your science to life. So for me, the engaged social scientist creates and co-creates knowledge that empowers communities and all stakeholders, transforms lives, and inspires all to protect our common home. Because in the end, we lose our sand, we lose our beaches, we lose our the, the the earth on which we stand. So what will be left for us, no? If stop, and so we need to take a closer or serious look on this sand and gravel mining, for the simple reason that if it's gone, what will be left for us? So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tabada. Now we move to the open part of our webinar. This portion will be moderated by Julie and Dr. Emma Porio. We will be getting your questions from our live stream of the Facebook page of Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, as well as through the chat box here via Zoom. We also highly encourage our Asian Peacebuilder scholars to take part in the conversation and send their questions for our guest speakers. Dr. Porio will be reading the first question coming from Facebook. Dr. Emma.
Okay, thank you very much, Ina, and Attorney Golly and Tess, thank you so much for the wonderful presentations. Every time I hear presentations like this, I feel like inspired. I want to get out of my house and go to the sea. Anyway, thank you very much. We have a very good question from Dr. Greg Tangonan. Dr. Tangonan is our Director Emeritus of the Ateneo Innovation Center. He left the Philippines in February and is still there in California. Perch, and I always tell him, you're perch in California and posing us questions. He has a very interesting question, Attorney Gali. He says, we need protein self-sufficiency strategy for the country and we need proper resource management, certainly is required. Also, we can consider the export potential of sardines and tuna, which are thriving industries already. I am interested in the industry participation of your project. Do the sardine exporters see rising or falling resources? Secondly, the tuna industry does not get mentioned here. We guess it's because the fishermen travel so far from our shores to catch tuna. Yet the industry continues to grow and export industry. What does your program do with and for the tuna industry? Attorney Golly? Thank you, Greg. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that question. Okay, I'll go first to tuna. So actually, it's WWF working on tuna. So Oceana is on sardines, protection of sardines. So now we have, after a long battle, National Sardine Management Plan, which is the roadmap, sustainable management of sardine fisheries. So sardine is, perhaps it might be the most important source of protein diet, and it's also a source of livelihood for so many of our people. So this is interrelated now to the establishment of 12 fisheries management areas in the country. I showed a map of that, where decision making process is now decentralized. A lot of the fisheries management areas are based on the geographical range of sardines, which would be the dominant species in those FMA areas. I can mention FMA. I call it FMA. FMA 7, 8, 11, I think 9 also. So we're looking now at the governance framework, the Fisheries Administrative Order creating the Fisheries Management Area System was enacted in January of 2019. It's only latter part of last year and also this year that 5 of the 12 management bodies have been established to precisely look at the reference points, harvest control rules, and measures to ensure sustainable management of our fisheries. As for the industry, they are and should be part of in the management body, and same with the other stakeholders. And I would really encourage the academe, the universities to be strong members of the scientific advisory group, which is required to be established as an advisory body, recommendatory body to the fisheries management area. So as you can see, we're just starting, and what Oceana did to help fast track or facilitate the creation of the 12 management bodies in the 12 fisheries management areas, we are now into implementation of the fisheries management area scorecard, compliance scorecard, where we have, and I can share this online. We have our the scorecard online and also the evaluators guide. So because this is pioneering, this is just a start. We're starting this year. There are, apart from Oceana, there are 10 non-government organizations who were involved in the crafting of these questionnaires and monitoring tool. This is much welcome actually by the regional offices of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. They are the lead agency in each of the fisheries management areas, because that helps guide them on the next steps on what needs to be done for the FMA to be really effective and in ensuring sustainable management of our fisheries. So we're on that now for the protection, sardines protection. So I hope I was able to answer your question, Greg.
Thank you very much, Attorney Golly. Next question is also from Dr. Greg Tangonan. So he says, seems like a regulatory capture of government agencies has been going on for decades. Is this true? Also, the lack of good data on the extraction numbers provides multiple opportunities at different levels for corruption. Which countries have been the major of extraction and causing major environmental damage? What are the chances of stopping the extraction for a period of legislative review? And is there a champion for revamping of the present system? Could having aerial imaging of the extraction areas getting done by academic teams help with this continuing review? Dr. Greg Tangonan in the Ateneo and his partners like the University of Visayas have the capacity to do this imaging, and local universities can contribute these valuable maps. We suggest from to form a consortium in this approach.
Thank you very much, Sir Greg. I think these are very helpful questions, I think, for us to reflect on what what I have presented. The first question, yes, actually, regulatory capture has been ongoing for a long time. It's, if you want to put it, it's the culture of the bureaucracy, especially in offices that have to do with resource, natural resources, forestry, mining. There are a lot of opportunities. That's true. And as we noted, part of the difficulty is that they do not have the capacity to review, to get the data independently from the monthly reports that are being submitted by companies, no? So that you practically rely on the company to give you the data, which you use as basis, no, for making the decisions, no, that are made. And so I think that's one thing that needs to really be changed. No, there in terms of whether there have been efforts towards this already. I mentioned earlier we have the Philippine Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the Philippine PHEITI. PHEITI actually is an international body, the standard which requires companies to disclose what they have received, and then for governments to disclose also the revenues that they have received, the taxes that were paid, to come to see if both the data actually are they for the civil society organization, the civil society representatives, to air out the concerns of the communities that are
Excuse me,
affected by
Tess.
extractive. Yes.
Tess, maybe you can tell them about the recent monitoring data presentation of the AMB where they use drones. Greg, Ateneo
Yes.
Innovation Center,
Yeah.
under the leadership of
Yes.
Greg, used drones in Javier Leyte after Yolanda.
Yes.
So
Actually, the some of in, the data from Ormoc City and the date and was used, actually used drones, and the pictures that I had on the front, the first slide, the four pictures there were actually taken by drone. We have our own GIS laboratory in the university, and so we used the drone to be able to take those pictures um, that you saw in the first slide, the four pictures there. So, but I'm sure it will be a welcome opportunity to collaborate, because the work that we have been doing now, um, well, we, there's room for um, additional help, for partnership, because it's something that we cannot do on our own. And at the same time, these are issues that cut across, at least for the Visayas. That's really cut across the Visayas. So it will be good to work together with other groups to see how, you know, what's happening in their own places, compare notes, and come up with uh, policy formulations based on all these different uh, the data that we get from all these different areas, including the use of aerial imaging, which is very important because it's different when you see it from the from above, not just on the ground. I don't know if that answers what chance of extraction. Regarding the stopping the extraction, actually in Ormoc City, the mayor issued an executive order, no? Executive order. They did a review. They did a field visit, a review of the areas, and then also NGD did. the mayor issued an EO actually putting a temporary stop to the operations in the area. And the major reason was really to, especially in one area where there was already there were a lot of damages, including the irrigation system of MIA in the particular area. So it's a moratorium to be, and to they sat down with the different permittees to agree on what do you call this, a plan to a plan for the repair and of the areas that have been the damage based on the data that was obtained from the field visit, and then also the use of this aerial imaging, as basis for making the decisions on whether to stop the whether to stop the extractions or ongoing extraction or not. Then to come up with also a plan, to have a more sustainable management of the resource. The city government has been doing that. That's what I'm aware of. No? And then at the same time, they're also doing a review of their mining ordinance. And I think it was already reviewed, then it's up for final votation, I think, of the Sangguniang Panglungsod. So they have done that already. I'm not sure if they have passed it, but I know that they were already on, I think, third reading. So
Thank you very much, Ms. And yes, I do. That is a really good question and the response, because it highlights the need to collaborate and emphasize the need to collaborate, from the academe, which makes research science-based, to the LGUs, and then towards the communities as well. I see at our other speaker, Attorney Golly, raising her hand. Attorney Golly, would you like to respond as well?
Yeah, well, in reference to, I mean, thanks so much, Tess. It's really enlightening what's happening in Leyte, and I guess this is happening all over the country. As to Greg's mention of regulatory capture, it's difficult to find evidence, but when there is shortcut in the processes and mechanisms provided for by law, including participation of stakeholders or lack of transparency, you can be sure there's something going which you cannot see. That's why it's so important for communities and various stakeholders to work together and ensure that the processes are really complied with, because we have laws to support that. And in addition, this is embedded in the Constitution and in the local government code, that there should be 3 local sectoral representatives in each of the lawmaking body in the entire country. So that means whatever projects that are being done in each of the cities, municipalities, barangays, provinces, there should be 3 from the community. One is reserved for women, one for workers, and the other will be determined by the Sangguniang. But there is so much resistance. But this is already a law. So it would be good to test this and file a case perhaps in the Supreme Court to make this law really real and alive, and to make sure that the provision in the Constitution that NGOs, people's organizations have a right to participate at all levels of decision-making process in the country, whether economic, social, and political. So they would always say, walang budget, but yet they can afford to buy luxurious vehicles and go into projects which are not needed at the moment. So siguro kailangan mag-mobilize ulit mga NGOs. I know for a while there was a very strong push on this, but let's make it real, because the Constitution, the local government code is already requiring that, but not being followed. For we can only speculate why. Thank you.
Thanks, Attorney Gali. There's another question here for you in the chat. So Badawi and Aravilatan says, "Hi, Attorney Gloria. Thank you so much for your talk. I'm glad to hear about the great works of Oceana is doing.
Thank you.
They probably missed, but can you tell us more? What do you mean by science-based?" And I think Dr. Porio can step in
Yeah.
to further elaborate on that. To what extent is Oceana collaborating with different groups in terms of scientific and social innovations?
Okay. So I would invite Dr. Porio to also support this. But,
But go
you
ahead,
know,
illustrate muna in your case how you did a science-based, working with the marine scientists and all those things at UP, okay? Thank you.
okay, so why the expedition? Because we want to show that what is in there beneath the waters, which we cannot see when just you're swimming or without snorkeling gears or diving gears, should be protected. These are beautiful. So you come up with this and then make a study. Ano ba to? Rare ba to? Or critically endangered ba tong species na to? So evidence-based siya na dapat basis for sound policy making. Nangyayari, kahit walang basis, in fact, even against the law, mayors, authorities, local, national, feel free to make their own decisions not anchored on science, on legal principles, on the law. So, kailangan baguhin ito. So, for fisheries management areas, for example, and I think this is the first such establishment of science-based decision-making, decentralized. There's a scientific advisory body, and not just natural science, social science, to advise the management board on the interventions that are needed to protect the environment. So another is Oceana, for example. We are an NGO, but we just don't, say, ay, problema ng gobyerno, hindi nila ginagawa. We are helping government capture the data. We are subscribing to VIIRS data. This is detection through satellite of night lights in municipal waters. So those dots that you saw, those are possible illegal commercial fishing happening in municipal waters. So that's based on science, and we use that to send letters to local governments, to even the DILG, Department of Agriculture, to show to them what is happening in our water. So use of technology is very important. So kaya kailangan i-mainstream talaga yan siya. And how do we collaborate? So we have a network, Panagat, pangista natin gawing tama. So Panagat is a network composed of people's organizations, non-government organizations, which really help us have a strong platform to collaborate with government, with other key stakeholders. One clear example is the municipal delineation of municipal waters. Before originally came up with a mainland principle, which reduces the municipal waters of existing coastal municipalities, because so that commercial fishers can come in. And we really strongly oppose that. We also partnered with local governments. They came up with their own position paper. There was a very strong move to use the archipelagic principle, which is part of our legal framework. And now we're very happy the Department of Agriculture and Bureau of Fisheries have changed their position seemingly on that matter. So unless we have the rules on that, we cannot be sure, but we are hoping that the delineation of municipal waters based on, municipal waters based on archaeologic principle, which is the outermost point of that area, will be considered. That will prevail. So I guess my really main point here is really a more vigorous, more engaged collaboration among various stakeholders should be happening, not just rely on government. Thank you.
Thank you, Golly. I really like your emphasis on partnership. Before I go on, I'd like to ask Tess, because Tess and I have been working with local government units, with our science and with our technology. Okay, Tess, can you please tell us your work with local governments and NGOs as a university and as a scientist and as a researcher? Okay.
the the Visayas State University is it's really the
Louder,
university
Tess.
VSU where I work. Our constituency is really not just Eastern Visayas, not beyond. And our flagship is really agriculture, so food, and forestry. We have a fisheries program, and then we have our environmental resource management institute, and then just recently our Gender Resource Center and our Institute for Strategic Research and Development Studies, which really is the social science center of the university. So we've been doing our ISRDS actually has been doing work with communities ever since it was created in 1981. And then the past 2 years, we've been working with the National Resilience Council, with the city of Ormoc, in the Leadership for Resilient LGUs program. And so we've been providing technical assistance to the city of Ormoc. We have a team which focuses on governance, leadership and governance, and on the science and technology aspects. We've been involved in and we just finished the NRC colloquium last October 30, where what we've been doing is that Ormoc is advanced in terms of having already their own SIDRA maps. So what we have been trying to do really is to encourage and to help them use the maps to be able to inform the work that they do, especially in terms of the different disasters that they have been confronting since we started also the work that we have done. And the latest was, of course, the COVID-19 and grid web-based grid already being used by the city. One, to inform decision making of the mayor. Secondly, for the public to be aware of what is being done by the local government units to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. So that has been our work with, especially with LG Ormoc. With the city of Baybay, where the university is located, we have been able to contribute to data in terms of the barangay management information system (BMIS), which is part of one of the programs of the barangay integrated nutrition, the Bidani program for nutrition. And so the BMS data has been used for contact tracing, has been used especially for contact tracing this COVID-19. We have been successful in that because of the BMS data, which have been regularly updated, and which actually won for Bye an award, the award for PCW as a learning center, because of the use of BMS for the gender programs of the city. So these are some of the things that we're doing. Actually, I think it has been we have, of course, there's still poverty, especially in Region 8. That's one of the things that we hope that we can help alleviate. Nutrition is an issue here. So there's still many things to do, but I like the point raised also by Attorney Golly about partnership, because I think in the end we cannot do it alone. The university cannot do it alone. So we need to partner and we need to be inclusive. It cannot just be who we want to work with, but we need to expand diverse, diverse and inclusive partnership so that we are really able to address all the issues that are confronting us. Because there's so many things, especially with the uncertainty brought about by COVID-19. There are also a lot of opportunities that are presented to us we need to just choose which of these will really be strategic and will bring about the things that we envision for the university and for the region as a whole.
So thank you very much, Tess. For all my students, the scholars in the Asian Peace Building Program, know that I specifically pick the resource speakers because of their distinguished illustrative practice of resource management, really, that they are all professionals, but practitioners, but science-based, you know? As I was telling my CCARPH of CCARPH partners, some of them are here. Like, I think Muntinlupa is here, Marilac, Bulacan is here, Santa Rosa is here, and all the others. I always say in the coastal cities at risk, to innovate is to collaborate. But to collaborate is also to navigate the systems that we're working. So in the Master of Disaster Risk Resilience, I always tell my students, problem focused, solutions driven with the systems lens. So when we work, I think, I always tell people, I'm just a researcher. All I know is to research, to teach, to write. That's all I know. So I think when we work with other people who have the conscious of our roles, we are academics and professionals, and some of us are also practitioners. So I always said to my colleagues that we have to be, CCARPH subscribes to the principles of transdisciplinary action research. To make things work, we have to co-generate our knowledge with the stakeholders. Like what Attorney Golly and Tess are doing, they're working with the stakeholders in gathering the data, finding out what's the status of the industry and the community. So you co-generate the knowledge with the stakeholders. In the process of doing so, we also build our own capacities, the capacities of the scientists to understand and perhaps to supply, policy recommendation, as well as the capacities of the people on the ground. They're able to see what is the information and the data systems look like. So if we have this kind of co-generation, co-creation capacities, then it's easy for us to own. Together, we should own the data, own our analysis and understanding of the situation, and perhaps we can enjoy some benefits from it, and we can be one in our suggestion and our vision of how we can be better managers of our own resources. We work with different. So thank you very much, Tess and Attorney Golly. I mean, I always tell my students, we prepare for you an intellectual feast. So I hope you'll enjoy it. So thank you. I mean, I really feel like I tell our partners in the National Resilience Council and in the local government units, I always say, to transform towards pathway of resilience, you have to be risk-informed, resilience-driven in your planning and development. You cannot provide responses to the hazard if you have not done the profile of risks that you're facing. So you have to have the profile of risks. It's understood by the officials and the local people. What are the risk challenges facing them? What are the kinds of, solutions driven and also resilience driven actions that you will do? So I can talk forever about this, but really, thank you very much, because you demonstrated what we would like professionals, NGOs, scientists to do. We should link our hands together. I always believe by being together, we can be more. Okay, so there's no room for fragmentation, for selective mechanisms and like that. We have to work together, okay? So Ina, are there other questions? I can see there are other exciting questions from the scholars, because I told them this is your opportunity to talk to the experts and practitioners. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's maybe we can take in one more question before we proceed to closing remarks. Doc Emma, no?
Oh my God, I always have to.
Okay. There's one here. I'll start from the earlier questions from Sigrid Sibug, although I think attorney has already seen this. The SEC released the Memorandum Circular Number 4, or the Sustainability Reporting Guidelines for publicity listed companies of the SEC in 2019, and the Commission on Human Rights is currently drafting a guidance document on business and human rights, in accordance with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. Um, the student is curious whether you have advocacies related to these and if these would have impact on the fisheries sector, especially for commercial fishing companies to ensure that their business operations and decisions are harmonious with the principles of sustainability.
Okay. I for the Philippines, the most that we have done is for our campaign is the ban single-use plastics, which we are working with enterprises who are or going into plastic-free alternatives for goods and services. But in other countries like in EU, Oceana in EU has now worked with insurance companies for them to look closely into the activities of the ones applying for insurance coverage, and if these are engaged in illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, then they should not be covered because there is a big risk to them. And perhaps moving forward, and when we have this regulations from the Commission on Human Rights, then we will bring that into our campaigns. But right now, it's only in the campaign to ban single-use plastics that we are working with the industry.
Yeah. Ina. Hi, Ina.
Yes.
Yeah, there is one question here that I think, we should look at. I think Hideyuki, I think the question, can you read the question of Hideyuki, please? Because I would
Sure.
like to elaborate on that, about
Okay.
the sewage system in Manila Bay.
Yes, so Hideyuki Yamasaki says, Hi attorney, I heard that the low capacity of the sewage system also affects the water pollution in Manila Bay, like untreated water directly goes to river and ocean. How much does it contribute to the marine pollution, and how does Oceana and the local government recognize the issues and take actions?
Yeah. Attorney Golly, would you like to talk about the interconnectedness? Because people do not pay attention to, to the sewage system in Manila Bay. I mean, I have a group, Attorney Golly, called Sacred Sundays with Scientists. No, so we always have a meeting there in Manila Bay. And my God, we were sitting
The
there
smell.
in the Starbucks, and I can smell the heavy, really bad smell of the sewers. I'm thinking to myself, how can we enjoy the soft breezes and the sunset when you are smelling all this bad. So can you please talk about the interconnectedness or the lack of it between the solid waste management strategies of the city with tourism, with so many other, and the marine system management? Thank you, Gabi.
Thanks, Em. Manila Bay is composed of several provinces, and it's not just Manila. So
Yeah.
from Bataan to Cavite, these are various ecosystems involved. And the principal task is largest in the local governments and, of course, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources to make sure that our anti-pollution laws are being implemented. But in our forum with the National Academy of Science and Technology, one scientist said that Manila Bay it's like has the worst is the most polluted body of water in the country. So when that Dolomite Beach so-called nourishment project was prioritized by government, many really reacted because we know the problem is largely water pollution. And here is government in the time of pandemic and climate crisis wasting taxpayers' money on something which should not have been prioritized, and now it's being reclaimed by the land, by the sea. So I mentioned in my response in the chat box the case of Metro Manila Development Authority versus concerned residents of Manila Bay. This is a 2008 ruling which already mandated DNR and other agencies to rehabilitate Manila Bay and restore its ecological integrity. So this is still ongoing because the Supreme Court used the writ of continuing mandamus, meaning that the case will not be closed until the objective is done, that Manila Bay has been restored to its pristine quality. So one of the causes is because lack of implementation. Industry, domestic household waste are all large, and hospitals. So it's such a dirty body of water. But we really have to make sure that also the people are very much informed of their choices, that they should not just dump or discharge anything, because everything 80% of the pollution in the ocean traces back to the sources inland. So we really have to work together. I know there's a coast project. There's so many projects. There are big plans from the National Economic Development Authority, Comprehensive Management Plan for Manila Bay. There's also the Manila Bay Coordinating Council, which has a plan as well for Manila Bay, but we're just good in making plans. People should make sure that those plans are being implemented. And these are all based on the law and, of course, science. So there's a lot that needs to be done. So we're doing our share. When that Dolomite Beach project, was installed, we were able to have more than 50 NGOs and scientists as well raise their voices and speak out and demand for stoppage of the project and compliance with the environmental impact assessment law. We have that, but not complied with. So we really have to work together on that. I mean, the law is empty if it's not being asserted.
Yeah. Thank you, Golly. Ina, can I read this last question? Last na talaga.
Sure.
Yeah. Because I find this important. The question from Ayaka, Kosei says, to elaborate Shuri's question, I understood and agreed that the importance and effectiveness of science-based approach to reinforce the policy. But what are the example of strategic communications with those outside the government, policy makers and decision makers? Before I ask Golly and Tess to respond to this, I would like to say that is why, guys, in your papers and in your exercises, I always stress clear communication. Be clear with your sentences, because I think we cannot be strategically communicating them when we scientists, we people in the academy do not clearly say things that can be understandable and actionable. So I would like to emphasize the importance of really taking care of our own business first. Clear sentences, clear communication lines, the points are very clear, because when we go out there and communicate, I mean, I myself, I always say, I only know how to write academic papers. I only know how to publish but really communicating to the broader audience that needs, there are risk communicators, that's people who have a background in science but can translate the message quite clearly to a broader public. I think Attorney Golly and Tess would have more experiences in dealing with that. Attorney Golly, please.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that question. So, as I discussed earlier, communications is key part of our strategy. So, well, apart from being very visible in social media, communication is challenging, especially when you want to convey the message to our fisher folks. So, we have set up, for example, for more to know about the fisheries code as amended, we have a primer, question and answer form, and then we've translated that to several dialects, Bisaya, Tagalog, Ilonggo. Now we're going into variety. We have various documentaries, we have films, and we make sure it's Filipino or English with Filipino translations, and our also into Waray translation. So that's quite challenging. You really have to look into the intended recipient of the message that you want to bring and know how they feel and how the best way to communicate with them. We also have policy papers, policy briefs addressed to decision makers in a very simple language. It's quite challenging, especially if you're a lawyer. You're so used to legal terminologies, but you really have to make it simple, concise, and making sure that your message is accurately relayed and that will be responded to by the intended recipient. So that has been what we are doing, and we update this like expedition that we just conducted to Panaon. We have newsletters, so gather all of this from various perspectives, and with the technology we now have, it's easier to relate to so many. And same with advocacy. We tap really the partnership of our youth leaders are so great. They're so used to Twitter blasts and send to lawmakers. Oh my gosh. And you can do so much. You're savvy in technology. And we have a lot of catching up to do, but take advantage of what you know and use it to the fullest. Thank you.
Okay, Tess?
My part is the realization after Yolanda, that story that they should have used tsunami instead of storm surge, so that people would have understood that the water would come in and at very high distance, and that people will not survive it. So I guess that illustrated the importance really of using language that is understandable, especially the scientific language, which sometimes cannot be understood. But I think what is also important is not simplifying the language, translating it is important. At the same time, realization that you have different audiences, and so you need different media in order to reach these different audiences. And so here in the university, I think we have our own web team, we have our media, we have also our traditional media team. So to be able to really respond to all this need for information, and for us, like in the Gender Resource Center, which has the sexual harassment office in the university, we really need to simplify, translate um, the 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 protocols and so that whoever comes will be able to know, will be able to understand, what needs to be done, especially when we do our first, what do you call this? When we do an orientation for our first year students, no? We need to be able to simplify and make them understand why it matters, that they are aware, why they should know about sexual harassment, why they should know about all these things, and what they can do, and what our office can do. So and then when we deal with used to have a project before also with DNR. So we did policy briefs to be able to explain the issues that we get in the field to the regional directors, that they understand what is from the perspective of the communities, what is happening, and incorporate it in the discussion during the upland development committee meeting. So I think it's important. I think what is important is for us, whether in civil society or in the academy, to be able to use all the available uh, technologies that are there. But at the same time, I'm a bit worried because fake news and all these things. How do we? I think my concern really is how do we make sure that when we use all this media, we're also able to ensure the veracity, the truthfulness of the information or the data that we pass on. I think that's my concern when I deal with those things.
Ina?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Tess. Ina, can you call on Mary, please?
Okay. Professor Mary Rosales of the Institute of Philippine Culture is here with us, and Dr. Porio wants her to say a few words to the class
About the reclamation, because she's very much involved, Attorney Golly, in the Manila Bay thing. So it would be good for Mary, Professor Mary, could tell us. You know, she's my first teacher. Mary, we cannot hear you.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you. I was just telling Emma privately that now she's my teacher because I'm learning all of this about environment and social sciences. So thank you. Attorney Gloria, we were connected in a way in the issue of the Aerotropolis of Bulacan because you had many involvements there. So I wondered, in relation to that, if you want to comment on it, or more, you know, what is happening to the entire Manila Bay because of the very large scale, high business oriented reclamation closer to Manila, but of course affecting the entire Bay, the model of which will probably extend to other local governments in the Bay if this is not checked in some way. So what is your view on reclamation with big business behind it and local governments in support? How do you deal with that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks so much, Mary, for this opportunity to discuss our campaign also to stop, we call it dump and fill. It's more vivid, dump and fill projects in Manila Bay. And we're looking at the Aerotropolis. We can see business and political authorities really working together. But we have to look at data. And we say Philippines is data deficient, but in Manila Bay, there are just loads of data, tons of data that we can use to ensure that that project will not take off. That entire area of the Aerotropolis project is part of the areas which we should avoid because this might be irrelevant in the future. Sea level rise, there's subsidence, there's liquefaction. It's susceptible to storm surges, to typhoons, even earthquake, intensity 8 earthquake. So why are we building there? And it's going to, this is sardine-rich spawning ground. And fisher folk who work near mangroves, and the remaining mangroves in Manila Bay is in Bulacan. They are not poor. They're able to send their children to college because they get much from nature. But now they're being displaced because of this project. That's a major flyway. More than 20,000 birds converge in that area. So the danger of airstrikes is not remote. So we should stick to the data, the studies, and we should stick to our law. We should implement the law. There's no environmental impact statement that the DNR has provided us on this project. And we have the right to access that because that's part of participatory and informed decision making. There is no transparency. And if you look at the behavior of the lawmakers in Congress and in the Senate, they fast track this legislative franchise to provided to build that airport and to avail of tax incentives. I read in one report it could be they're exempted from all forms of tax, which can be like something like 150 million or 150 billion if it is required from them. So why are we giving all of this privilege to an enterprise when we should ensure the resiliency of our natural life support systems? Food security, our authorities are saying it's important. But why are we destroying the marine habitats, the wetlands, the mangroves, the waters, when food security is supposed to be of the highest priority to our people? So there's lack of coherence in policies and programs of the government. And we have the Climate Change Act, Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act, which also requires integration of climate change impacts and providing the necessary response, mitigation, adaptation to the impacts of climate change. I don't know if you know of our lawmakers who are of that mindset. So now it's really up to the people whether we would allow those projects to continue or not. I'm telling you, the law is rich, the science is rich. So we have to work together and get all constituents involved and send a strong message to the government. We don't need the business as usual mindset. We are for the survival of this generation and the next generation. And it is our duty to ensure that. So this is going to be a big fight. We've already sent notice to sue to the possible respondents in this case. We are preparing, gearing up for a lawsuit to stop this project. Thank you.
Ina?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Golly and Professor Mary, for those questions. We now shall officially close the webinar, so I shall call on again our main convener, Dr. Emma Porio, to give us a few messages for closing remarks. Dr. Emma.
Thank you very much, Ina. Thank you. Before I go on, I'd like to thank my CCAR project management staff headed by Ina, Viv and Miko and all the others, because they've been, wonderfully managing this. If left to my own devices, I'll go bonkers with this technology. Anyway, thank you very much, Attorney Golly, Ramos, Tabada, and all those questions that are coming from the audience, from Greg Tangonan, from the Asia Pacific, from the Asian Peacebuilders program scholars. Thank you very much. After every webinar, I always feel like, oh, I've been renewed intellectually and emotionally and spiritually. So thank you very much. I think we've learned a lot. Thank you, Mary and the others, for giving all these wonderful questions. Also, thank you to those who are in the FB Live participating to us, because I think those who registered, they are in our Zoom account, and while also others are in the FB Live, because that's more manageable from the other points of view. So we would like to invite, before I close, I would like to invite you to our webinar tomorrow, which will be focused, Cap Esperanza, we call her Cap Sisan, Esperanza Cap Sisan Lee of the Blue Ridge, community. I met her 2-3 years ago because their barangay became identified by the DILG and by Congress as one of the most outstanding barangay in the city in terms of trying to formulate some resiliency-driven program. So we will hear her tomorrow together with Esther Lona. Ina has, thank you, Ina, for flashing it. So we will also pair her with ecosystems-based adaptation inside ancestral domains in Bukidnon by Esther Luna Canoy, who is the head of the Kitanglad network of NGO centers. So also on Thursday, we will have the Mekong panel chaired by Surichai Wonggyo of the Chulalongkorn University Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, alongside Professor Chayan Banabuti of the Chiang Mai University Resource Center. They're doing wonderful things there together with the International Rivers Group. So thank you very much. I would really thank everyone for making this webinar today quite lively and, you know, dynamic in terms of the position. So this is what we want to do, to create, you know, lively discussions, and perhaps in my students, they're able to think, what does it mean for their own respective NGOs, for their own respective commitments. I always say, we must commit to a better future. We must commit to put our talents, our energies to making a better future, because that's the only choice, I think. You know, so if we have to care for our common home, as Pope Francis said, then we have to devote the best of us, okay? So thank you very much. Attorney Golly will, you know, Attorney Golly and I, we share the same seashores. Our beach houses are not far from each other. So Tess, thank you very much. You know, we have a partnership with the Visayas State University. And so we will continue that. And I hope, by the way, I want to invite Attorney Golly and Tess in our previous panels with Japan and other places. We were thinking of creating a loose solidarity network of universities and NGOs and communities working together, you know, alongside. So we'll invite you that, and we'll talk about it later, but you know, we'll get our act together first by putting all together the presentations. And then we will also put in our YouTube channel all the presentations so that people can go back to it if they miss it and the like. So thank you very much. And we will look forward to other lively encounters in the future, in the near future, okay? Thank you. And thank you very much to all the audience. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc Emma. Thank you to all our speakers and to all attendees. We appreciate your feedback for the processing of today's webinar. So please send in your comments through the evaluation form at tinyurl.com/crmhd3. We look forward to seeing you again, as mentioned, and tomorrow. So please register at bit.ly/crmhd4. So for students who are not part of the resource management and human development class, we'd like to ask you to kindly leave the Zoom room now so we can post-process and discuss class